Let's be honest, when you hear the term options trading, does your brain just kind of glaze over? Yeah, you're not the only one. But today, we're going to change that. We're going to break down this whole complicated idea using a really simple story. It's about a farmer, a trader, and yep, some cows. Stick with me, and by the end of this, I promise you'll finally get it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll set the scene with our story. Then, we're going to follow a trader named Bob who makes a bet that prices are about to shoot up. After that, we'll switch perspectives and see how a farmer named Jacob uses a very similar tool, but for a totally different reason, for insurance. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the one big idea you need to remember.
All right, let's get into it. To really understand how options work in the financial world, it helps to see how the idea works in the real world first. And to do that, well, we're going to need some cows.
Okay, fair question. What on earth do cows have to do with stocks and finance? Well, it turns out pretty much everything when it comes to understanding the basic idea. The principles of buying and selling rights, whether it's for cattle or company shares, are exactly the same. So let's meet our players.
So, in our story, we've got two main characters. First, there's Jacob. He's the farmer, the guy on the ground who raises the cattle. And then you've got Bob, a sharp trader who's always on the lookout for a deal. The way these two interact is going to show us everything we need to know.
Okay, so this is where things get interesting. Our trader, Bob, gets a hot tip. He hears about a massive opportunity, but it also comes with a pretty big risk. Let's see how he decides to play it. So here's the rumor Bob hears. A huge international chocolate company is about to sign a massive deal with the local dairy. Now, for the dairy to make all that extra chocolate milk, they're going to need a ton of new cows, and they're going to need them fast. And what happens when demand suddenly goes through the roof? You got it. Prices are about to surge.
Bob sees this golden opportunity, right? Buy cows now at the low price and sell them later when the price spikes. Simple. But here's the catch. What if the tip is wrong? He doesn't want to bet the farm, literally, and risk all his cash buying a whole herd of cows that might actually go down in value. He needs a smarter way to play this.
So he goes to Jacob the farmer with this kind of brilliant idea. He doesn't offer to buy the cows right now. Instead, he asks to buy the right to purchase those cows later on. But, and this is the key part, at today's price. He wants to lock in the price. Okay, let's break down the actual deal that cooked up. Bob gets the right to buy 5 of Jacob's cows at the current price of $2,000 a pop. For this privilege, this option, he pays Jacob a small, non-refundable fee of $50 per cow, so $250 total. And the deal's only good for the next 30 days. Jacob's thinking, hey, $250 in my pocket for doing nothing? Sure. So he agreed.
Fast forward 3 weeks, and bam, the tip was good. The news breaks, the chocolate company deal is real, and the dairy starts buying every cow in sight. The local market just explodes.
And just look at that. The new market price for one of those dairy cows has now shot up to $2,500. But you've got to remember, Bob has that piece of paper that says he gets to buy them for a whole lot less. So what does Bob do? He immediately goes to Jacob and says, "Time to cash in. I'm exercising my right." Now, Jacob is legally bound by their contract. He has to sell those 5 cows to Bob for $2,000 each, even though he knows they're worth more on the open market. So Bob buys the cows for $2,000 each and immediately flips them to the dairy for the new $2,500 price. That's a $500 profit on each cow. After we subtract the $250 he paid Jacob for the contract in the first place, Bob walks away with a cool $2,250. And the amazing part, he made all that by controlling the cows, without ever having to risk his capital by buying them up front.
And that special contract Bob bought, that piece of paper that made this all possible, well, in the financial world, that is exactly what we call a call option. It is a contract that gives you the right, but, and this is so important, not the obligation to buy something at a price you've already agreed on.
So that agreed-upon price of $2,000, that has a special name too. It's called the strike price. It's the price at which the deal is struck. Simple as that. And what about that $50 fee Bob paid for each cow? That's called the premium. And here's why that's so crucial. If Bob's tip had been a dud and cow prices had actually fallen, all he would have lost is that $250 premium. That was his maximum risk. That's all he had on the line. But wait, our story isn't quite over, because now the tables have turned. Jacob, who just had to sell his cows for less than they were worth, has learned a big lesson, and now he's the one with a problem. He's worried about prices falling. Jacob looks at this new high price of $2,500 and he thinks, you know what? This feels like a bubble. This can't last. He wants to sell the rest of his cows while prices are high, but he's afraid the price might crash before he gets a chance. He wants some insurance.
So, learning from what Bob just did to him, he goes to another trader, we'll call him Chad, and he basically does the exact same thing but in reverse. This time, Jacob is the one buying the contract. He pays Chad a premium of $30 a head for the right to sell Chad 10 of his cows for a guaranteed price of $2,400 each anytime in the next 2 months.
And you know what? Jacob Scott was right. About a month and a half later, the market gets flooded, the hype dies down, and the price of a cow drops all the way down to $2,250.
So Jacob exercises his right. He forces Chad to buy his 10 cows for that locked-in price of $2,400 each, even though they're only worth $2,250 now. That's an extra $150 per cow he just saved. After you subtract the $300 premium he paid, Jacob walks away with an extra $1,200, money that would have just vanished if he hadn't bought that insurance contract.
And that contract that Jacob bought, the one that let him sell high even when the market was low, that's what we call a put option. It is the perfect mirror image of Bob's call option. It gives you the right, but again, not the obligation, to sell an asset at a predetermined price.
Okay, let's zoom out and bring this all home. We've seen Bob make a speculative bet, and we've seen Jacob buy himself some financial protection. They use different tools for different reasons, but when you get right down to it, they're really just two sides of the very same coin.
So, here it is, the simple breakdown. A call option, that was Bob's bet, it's a right to buy, and it's what you want when you think prices are going to rise. The motivation is pure speculation, going for a profit. Then you have the put option, that was Jacob's insurance. It's a right to sell, and it's what you use when you think prices are going to fall. The motivation there is all about protection.
And really, that's what this all boils down to. Options are just tools. They can be used to make aggressive, speculative bets on the future, like Bob did, or they can be used to protect the value of something you already own, like Jacob. So the only real question left is, if you were to use them, what would it be for? Speculation or insurance?